Hi, my friends, and welcome into this week's episode of the Forte Catholic Podcast. My name's Taylor Schroll. It's a joy to have you here joining us today. We know we have a lot of new listeners over the last few weeks, and we are so happy that you are here in addition to our regulars. So Chris Bartlett is my co-host today. We play the old game, Two Roses and a Thorn. Two things that are going great in our life, and one thing that's just been a thorn in our side. I share a little bit about some of the great wins in family life, and my daughter being in the Nutcracker. It was so awesome. We talk about some wins in just ministry and some events this year. And then also the thorn is my list of enemies is constantly growing, and I'm not sure how to feel about it. And I think I'm a little upset towards the end of the episode. So we hope that you enjoy this conversation with Mr. Bartlett. If you do, make sure that you hit subscribe wherever you are watching or listening. Enjoy. Hello there. I'm Taylor Schroll, and that is Christopher Leandro Bartlett. Hello, Christopher.
Hello, Taylor. How are you, my friend?
I am doing well. I am something currently that I have not been in a very long time that I am most of the year. I am currently something that I haven't been in a long time that I am most of the year. Any guesses?
Free from mortal sin.
No, that's not the case. Not the case. Any other guesses?
Got a little too real too quickly. Let's see. A homeowner. It felt like you wanted to get rid of your home for a while, so maybe
exactly.
You've embraced it again. It's come back around.
I want to be slightly homeless. No, I'm sweaty for the first time in a very long time. Something that I usually am all year for two reasons. It has been like in the 40s most days for the last 2 weeks here in Central Texas,
fabulous.
which is the thing that is not common. And then literally today, so for the last 14 days, it's been the high has been under 50 or at least low 50s, right?
Yep.
And then today, it's 82. And then tomorrow and the rest of until Christmas, it's back in the 50s. So one day, just got really hot. And I'm running late because I just went to red light therapy, which I've talked about doing on the show before. Red light therapy, cryotherapy, the sauna. Essentially, red light therapy typically is not like the sauna. You're not getting sweaty. The whole purpose of the sauna is to sweat. The whole purpose of red light therapy is to lay there and not feel anything. That's literally the whole point. Well, the last 2 times that I've gone, it has been on that weird point where the building is we're not sure if we should put out AC or the heater, but it's been cold. So they've been pumping the heater into this room that has a large machine that also builds warmth.
Yes.
So I went to the sauna red light machine today, and I literally just came home from that, did not have a chance to cool off, and now I'm recording the show. So we're back to a summer episode of Forte Catholic here in the third week of Advent.
The old rotisserie. The rotisserie
Exactly.
Taylor, yes.
Hopefully roasting off the fat. That's the whole point of going to this place. You freeze it off every other day and roast it off every other day.
Crispy little Taylor fat. Yum, yum.
Yeah, we're going to start cooking that here pretty soon. So you have worked in youth ministry for a very long time, as have I. And there's this typical thing to get kids talking in small group called Two Roses and a Thorn.
Yes.
Over under how many times you've used Two Roses and a Thorn in your 20-ish years of ministry?
Yeah, 20 plus. And I would say probably 25 times. It's not my go-to. Two truths and a lie.
Wow.
250 times, Two Roses and a Thorn, 25 times.
Oh, you want to get people lying at church. That does fit with you a lot more. Speaking of lying at church, I'm jumping the gun on how I thought I was going to tell this story, but I was the MC and a musician for a diocesan youth rally for junior high kids this past week in the great old city of Beaumont. You've heard of this place, yes?
Yeah, wonderful, yeah.
Yeah. Great bishop. This is the now third time I've been invited back. It's one of the rare places that invites me back. Most people are like, it was good, but it's enough, So
Sure.
Once a year they've invited me back, and it's been very nice. Well, I was the MC and also the worship leader. And during my MCing time, I was given an hour to do games and fun activities and stuff. And then I played all the games and activities, and a lot of those games have to do with trivia, biblical trivia. You've been with me when I've played some of these games. And let's just say Those games didn't last very long because they got eliminated pretty quickly. So I had to start pulling things out of my hat to play new games. So I was like, I said something to the effect of like, well, I planned for that to go a little longer, but y'all weren't smart enough. Those were like my exact words to, people that I was trying to draw nearer to the Lord. And so I started doing something that I never do. I believe you've done this. Is Simon Says one of your go-tos? I think I've seen you lead Simon Says.
Yep. I did it at that middle school rally that we recently did here in
Correct.
the area. And I was leading a retreat this last weekend, and I was like, let's do it. I call it Simon Says, but I'm like pretty cutthroat. So I get people out left and right. Yep.
You and I have talked in the past before about how our tongues can get us in trouble because we're so quick off the cuff, but that often means that there wasn't thought put into what we say
It
out loud.
bypasses the brain. Yep.
So if we have a microphone and it's live, it's kind of hard to reel those things back in. Well, I've never had an experience with junior high students where I purposely broke as much trust as I possibly could right before we went into a time of like a talk and then praise and worship. Like literally what this was like, hey, there were other people that were going to do icebreakers. They flaked out. Can you fill in for this last icebreaker? Cool. I had run through the other games. I hadn't planned on doing this one. But I was like, what do y'all want to do? And they were like, Simon, you want to play a game earlier that we played, or do you want to play a new game? And they said, Simon Says. I was like, well, I don't typically lead it. So I will say that it took me a couple of minutes. I've seen a lot of people in ministry that have like perfected this, but I don't have like my go-to moves. So it took me a little while to start getting them out. But I started doing things so diabolical. Like the other games we had played during the day, once, there's like 6 or 7 people left, I call them all up to the front so that they can stand at the front and we can see who the last elimination people are.
I love this move. Yes.
So I was like, all right. We gotta move into this talk. Maggie Craig was the speaker. I got to meet her in person for the first time. I was like, look, Maggie's here. She's ready to go. So like Maggie literally walked up, the keynote speaker. And she was walking up. She was ready to go. I was like, all right, she's up here. We got to make this quick. I want to finish the game. If you're still in, come up to the front. And like 35 people moved. I'm like, you're all out if you ever did it or whatever. Oh, it was very funny. And then I did the like fake prayer. I'm like, all right, if you're still in, like, we really have to stop. Let's pray. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And they all did the sign of the cross. I'm like, you're out, you losers. I did more to break more trust right before leading into a talk and then adoration and then mass than I ever possibly could. And people came up to me at the end and said, thank you. That was great. And I don't understand how you had a positive reaction to me being diabolical right before I led you in prayer. I don't understand how people just accept this game.
There's a game, One Night Werewolf. There's also a game called Secret Hitler. My father-in-law is very confused about why we bring it to his house over the holidays to play and different things like that. When you enter into the game world, Taylor, you can do and be anything so long as it falls into the game world. So be Simon. They weren't mad at you. They were mad at Simon.
Correct. Who's the leader of first leader of our church, and there's
Simon
probably some
Peter.
anger towards him anyway.
So you're saying, so therefore they're mad at the church itself. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think maybe a little confession and you'll be good to go.
I saw you keep bringing that up. I feel like I harmed you in some way. You're like, hey, just your third reminder in the first 8 minutes of the show, you should go to confession. I'm sorry I was 10 minutes late, Chris. I don't know what you want me to do.
One of my favorite all-time moments, and you'll have to go back, listeners, to find it. There was an episode of Forte where Taylor was pushing Father Anthony to hear his confession on the podcast. Yeah. And the amount of awkwardness, because Father knows he's not supposed to deny someone confession, but he also knows this is not the proper context. He's like, Taylor, what are you doing to me? And the interplay there was just hilarious. So, So yeah, maybe
speaking of
maybe
diabolical pranks, that was definitely one of them. That was most definitely. Yeah. That was a prank over the course of 2.5 years that ended at a Seek conference. It couldn't have ended any better. It was awesome. Yeah, it's great to get booed and cheered by a group of hundreds of people watching your live podcast at a Focus conference. Very good.
Yes.
So, yeah, played the game. It was great. Something else you said sparked something, and I forgot what it was. It'll come to me completely randomly whenever you're in the middle of a story later, and I'll interrupt you. So,
but we this past weekend at the retreat that I was leading, during Simon Says, I said, Simon Says the game begins, everyone stand up. Simon Says everyone stand up, that type of thing. So they were already mid-game. And I was like, you know what, though? if you're teens, if you're confident you can beat the adults, just point to the adult that's going to get out before you do. And like 7 or 8 of these teens turned around and pointed to, the fun adult leader or whatever. And I was like, Simon didn't say, and they all had to sit down.
Oh, yeah. See, they wanted to take their shot. You come at the king, you best not miss.
Yeah, that's right. It was immediate poetic justice. Yeah, it was sweet.
Well, you definitely helped me with my segue into something I didn't plan on talking about. But I love whenever there's there's oftentimes attacks against Catholics in the Catholic Church on the internet. And most of the time they're just old and just annoying. And a lot of them are, aimed towards me. I'm just, just kind of over it at this point. But there was one. It was a Protestant critique of Catholicism that was hilarious, and I actually found very funny. And it had to do with Simon and the Pope. And we were just accidentally talking about Simon Peter, our first Pope, and just kind of some of the wishy-washiness about like what the Pope says is infallible and what isn't. And, it said essentially Catholics, or, Pope says something controversial. Catholics in all caps. But he didn't say Simon says. Like speaking from the chair of Peter, which is literally Simon, you have to be speaking for the chairs of Peter, and you have to be speaking about faith and morals and all these things. And like, he didn't say Simon says. It's just a great joke, and I just had to give props to this anti-Catholic Protestant. It was very funny.
Beautiful. That is beautiful.
So as I mentioned, I did go and speak at this conference, and it was good. But it was a little bit of a busy weekend because you and I have talked before that this was another instance where I was not the first choice to be invited to speak or lead worship at a retreat or a conference or whatever. Someone else backed out last minute, so they called me, which was nice. I'm never going to complain about that. It's not I am perfectly fine not being the first choice. I learned that through the dating life, that I was never going to be anybody's first choice. I'm perfectly fine as long as you pick me, choose me, love me in the end. It's just great. Well, that's what happened. They called me a couple of months ago. Typically DAS and stuff is scheduled 6 to 12 to 18 months in advance, right?
Yeah.
And that's what they did. Like, they did their job. I love everybody in the office. They did great. But this organization, an organization similar to you.
I'm just hearing this now and realizing I just got asked to speak at the diocesan conference here in our own diocese, like the week before Thanksgiving. I'm just realizing as you're talking
that you weren't the first choice.
That I'm like, and now I'm real. Oh my gosh, Taylor, you're totally right. Yeah, they would totally plan in advance. Oh no. Oh no, I wasn't the first choice either.
Oh man, I'm glad this is all totally accidental. I love it. You're being humbled in the middle of the show. You were throwing daggers in my accidental humility. But that's very, very funny, by the way.
Yeah, sorry.
So they invited me and Maggie, and we were both able to come. And it was cool. Like I've spent time with Maggie on digitally because I've edited a lot of podcasts that she's been a guest on, but I never got to meet her in person. She was great. It was just a really, really good day. But by the time that they had asked me, it was on this past Saturday. And on this past Saturday, I think I've mentioned before on the show that my middle daughter, has been in ballet for many, many years. And she's been in ballet with this Christian dance studio. In addition to being in ballet with this Christian dance studio, there's a performance of the Nutcracker every year where all the dance studios in the area come together. They put on a performance at Texas A&M in this huge 2,500 person theater, and they run 4 performances on one Friday night and then 3 on Saturday. My whole extended family was coming into town. We were hosting them at our house. We were all planning to go on Saturday. We coordinated 4 different families, to meet together, and we planned it on Saturday. And I'm like,
and these things are selling out.
Yeah, they're selling out. It's going to be like, they already say on the tickets, no refunds, no exchanges. You can't move. Yeah. Like, once you bought them, and we had bought them in advance because we needed whatever, 10, 12, 14, whatever it ended up being.
Yep.
So they call me, and this is a diocesan office I've built up a relationship with. I've worked with them now for, one event every year for 3 years. Like, there's trust built up there. And I'm like, look, because I know you, I'm essentially going to say, like, I will do it if I can reschedule to go see my daughter on Friday. Like, I am not missing my daughter performing in the Nutcracker. Like, this is literally the biggest performance of her life. This is the biggest moment of her, like, other than her birth and, like, her baptism was important to me. She didn't care. She was, 2 weeks old. First communion,
her birth was the biggest performance of her life up until then. I don't know how she was performing, but here she is.
It's mostly just kicks and stuff. She was doing gymnastics in the womb, but this
That's
is
right.
dance. Ballet is a little different, but similar. So this is the biggest, biggest day, like biggest thing I needed to be there for her, right? Like my son's been in some championship sports games and stuff, but it's like, this is her big moment. And, we've been so supportive of Chris and my Chris and his sports. Like I had to be there. I can't miss her performance.
No doubt. No question. Yep.
So I was like, look, if I can switch to Friday, then I'll do it. Like, can you give me 24, 48 hours to work
Figure it out.
We called the family. We had essentially, we couldn't do it online, but my wife contacted somebody at the ticketing office. We were able to move everybody to Friday. Everybody in my family changed their plans to come on Friday night so that I could go to the performance from 7 till about 9:30. I left, or about 9, and then we got out of there by about 9:30. Take pictures, give flowers, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
I leave at 9:30. Have a 3-hour drive to Beaumont that night. I get there at 12:30. I'm wired. I fall asleep around 2:00 in the morning, wake up a little bit before 8, get there, and I'm working like all day. Like I'm emceeing, I'm leading worship, and then I have to drive back 3 hours that night. Like exhausting weekend, but it ended up working out. And we're doing this 2 roses and a thorn. One of my roses is I got to see my daughter perform as an angel in the Nutcracker, and I cried. It was beautiful. She's just so cute, so sweet. It was just really, really nice to see her. I had never seen the Nutcracker before, so it was fun. And sitting there snuggling with my other daughter the whole time. Just a beautiful, beautiful evening of it's like it doesn't always happen where everything kind of goes, like it all just kind of clicks into place. I took care of the family stuff, took care of the work stuff, made everybody happy. All is good. Huzzah.
Yeah. That little cherry on top of fatherhood, just like boom, when those moments come together, you're like, all the toil was worth it. If this is the only moment I get this year, it would have all been worth it.
Right.
That's beautiful. So happy for you.
Very, very good. So I kind of smushed two roses into that one. It was a deformed rose with multiple petals. So I did 2 roses, or I did 2 roses in one. I have another rose and I have another thorn, but I would like for you to now go. And just like a good youth minister, I'm gonna let you pick which direction you'd like to go.
I'll start with a rose.
Okay,
I'll start with a rose. Yeah, and this is kind of a thorn that turned into a rose. The retreat. Da 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 da.
Just like I play guitar in the background of like retreats that we work together on when you're giving a talk or leading into prayer, I'm gonna do that the whole time you tell your story.
When I need to stop giving my talk, that's when you start playing the guitar. Like, Chris, exactly. we're gonna do a song in 30 seconds, whether you're still talking or not.
It's the nicest way to say, get the hell off the stage. We're tired of hearing you talk.
Yeah, it's in Christian charity. Here's a couple of chords.
It's unloving towards you, the speaker, and loving towards everyone else in the room.
it is an act of divine mercy. So we led this retreat this weekend, and it's a confirmation retreat, which means most of the kids were required. Well, all the kids were required to be there. It's multi-parish, which means there's also this kind of relational authority that doesn't even exist among the total of the retreat because, well, you've led this retreat with me before.
Sure.
And we've got like 6
and
different
I wasn't
parishes
your first
there.
choice.
Yeah, that is true. You weren't the first choice. I don't know if it was mine, but nevertheless, we got to lunch, and me and Jeremy, the first choice, we kind of had a little bite.
He's such a pretty man.
He is. And I said, are we? I mean, I know we're getting on base, but we're not hitting home runs or even doubles, And he's like, yeah, something's off. But it was rainy the whole day. It was gloomy outside, and it was just kind of one of those days where you wanted to, I don't know, pull out your old dashboard confessional CDs, listen to them, and cry a little bit. You know what I mean? It was just a kind of a sad, gloomy day. And the rose in all of this, because that sounds a little thorny, the rose in all of it is, by the time adoration came about that Saturday evening, these teens, even the ones that I were like, they're never going to open up. Like, I don't know if they're even, baptized. Like, I don't know if there's a God in their world. Like, they were singing, they were engaging, they were praying, they were worshiping. It was beautiful. And the reason why it's such a rose is because I'm not capable of doing that, which means God showed up. God showed up and captured their hearts along the way. And it's such a good experience to be at the front row of those hearts that are changing. And in ministry, we're privileged to be there quite often, but it's still rarer than we would like. But I got to see it on Saturday, and that was awesome.
So you looked at the teens at the end of that day. You became the light on the dark side of me. Love remains a drug. That's the high and not the pill. But did you know that when it snows, my eyes become large and the light that you shine can be seen? Baby! I sang it in my head the whole time. I didn't want to annoy you or the listeners, but I didn't hear a word you said. I was just
yeah, that's fair. Good. So there's my rose. I'm passing it back to you for either a rose or a thorn from you.
I love that we literally admitted two things in that story. One, that I wasn't your first choice, and two, just an observation I have. You and I have never had a day where things weren't working, so I'm just throwing that out there.
Yet.
We'll try again in January when we drive to Corpus Christi together.
That's right. Yep.
Okay. I am going to do, just because of transitional stake, I think we're going to end with my final thorn because I think it's going to enter into a whole nother conversation. But my other rose is something that I think you'll feel happy about. Events and bookings are going well for the first time in my life in like 4 years. You are not the only person getting me speaking and worship events anymore. They're coming out of the woodwork, and I'm very excited. Like, I got this Beaumont one. I'm going to Victoria tomorrow to lead for what's it called? Theology on Tap, but they can't call it that because of
legal
copyright reasons. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Is this with Lydia?
Theologos on in the bottle. I don't know what they're calling it, but yes. So they're starting, the Diocese of Victoria is starting a brand new young adults ministry with these not Theology on Taps. And the first speaker is their bishop. The second speaker is me. And the third speaker is your coworker, PJ Lozano. So in my world, I think that's just a huge digression. Bishop to me and then me to PJ. I mean, that's just a downward spiral they're going down.
Bishop Brendan is going to be hard to follow. He's amazing.
Oh, so you're saying it differently. I have a hard act to follow. PJ has an easy act to follow. That's what you're that's a different observation.
Yeah, you should probably sing because PJ doesn't do that. And that way you'll be like, distinguish yourself. But like their bishop down there is great. Lydia, I just pray for these new diocesan directors. It's neat to be able to see millennials and even some Gen Zs coming into the diocesan offices. And there is just a neat, I don't want to say changing of the guard because that sounds weird or negative, but there's just some neat space being made for new energy, new thoughts, and fresh approaches to evangelization. So to hear that that's going on and you get to be a part of it, I think you got a front row seat of something pretty special too. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited. And then early in next spring, like a lot of times, like I was mentioning earlier, like in the before the whole world shut down, like I would be booked 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 15 months out in advance. And now it has added to the financial instability or just we've been able to do ministry full time for the last 4 years. I get paid, Sarah gets paid, like all is good because the money always ends up coming in somehow. But it's always been like a month out or 2 months out where like I don't know that the money's coming in. So it's literally always stressful. Literally money is always stressful, right?
Yeah.
And now like we're getting this little reprieve where I have some stuff booked out, later in the spring. I'm doing a diocesan conference where another one where they're inviting me back because again, that feels really good because it's like it's not just we tried this guy out and we didn't like him, but it's like one that I did 2 or 3 years ago and they're invited me back. It's awesome to be part of that like stable of people that they trust to come in and do it. Great. I also have 2 new ones. I'm doing a parish mission, which I've talked to you quite a bit about because I've only ever done one and I feel like I'm very good at them. And yet I've only ever done one. So I get to do my second parish mission by myself. That's not for a parish that I attend, so that's pretty cool. That same week, I'm going up to join the cast of Yellowstone. I'm doing a diocesan conference in Montana.
Really?
I'm going up to be a cowboy for a little bit. Yeah, it's a diocesan conference. It's one of like.
Are there country worship songs? You know what I mean? I know there's like praise and worship songs, but they're all different variations of kind of pop hymns. Right. They're all like that, all these different pop hymns, but are there like country songs?
Yeah, I mean, they exist. Like,
That
have
are
you
worship.
ever heard of Cowboy Church?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
I think it's just, I think I know all the songs. I just got to sing them a little different. How
There you go.
great is our God.
I love it.
Sing with me, how great. I need to get a fiddle player to come with me. But it's
yeah.
cool. Like, I've never been to Montana. I've always actually wanted to go, even before Yellowstone, but especially after watching Yellowstone. It's like, it looks so, so, so pretty. And because it's this small diocese in Montana, I'm going to fly to an airport that's barely in Montana and then get a rental car and drive like across Montana to get to this diocese. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled. Usually I like flying someplace in the event to be within 10 minutes of the airport. No, that is not the case. I'm so happy that I get to drive through Montana. I'm just thrilled, and I'm going to make more in a week and a half than I've made for half of this year. It's just such a huge blessing, like ministerially, financially. It's fun, something to look forward to, something to bring hope, which I suck at. It's just very, very good.
I need you to, on that drive, pull over at one point and do a Facebook reel for your audience so that we can see the most Montana of Montana on that drive.
Yeah, it's just I'm gonna find the least impressive part of Montana. Oh, it's just grass for miles.
It'll be a tractor going by and a horse is driving the tractor, and you're right. This is it. This is it.
Not pulling the tractor, driving.
Right, literally driving it. Yeah.
Well, that's
good.
That's very good. All right, that's my other rose. All right, you have to go twice now because I'm ending with my thorn.
Okay, good. I will say that one of the thorns is just illness. We've gone through a bout of illness, and it's beautiful in the sense that like my son's home right now, but like we had a blast. I took a little half-hour break and we played a board game, and then we did lunch together. And I'm hoping he's finally asleep because I'm like, you can't do media anymore today. And he's like, well, then what am I supposed to do? I'm like, get better, rest and get better. But we did this about 3 or 4 weeks ago, right before Thanksgiving. And it was this. One person stayed home. Then by the time that person got back to school, one day, and then 2 people were home from school the next 2 days. Then the weekend, everyone was sick, and by Monday, only 1 kid stayed home. So it just kind of goes through the family, and it's going through the school, and it's going through the neighborhood. Yesterday, our neighbor was sick, and I'm like, well, it's coming. It's going to come hit our house, and then it's going to stay in our house for about a week, and then it'll move on to some other unsuspecting family. So illness is hard, and it's disruptive too. And I don't want to say this in a bad way, but like, I kind of enjoy having the house to myself as someone else who works from home, just to be able to be like, I'm going to buckle down. I'm going to focus so hard that I forget to eat lunch. And then I pop my head up and it's 2:45 and I go grab a bite to eat and come back and do it again. Like I love those type of moments in work. And when there's a tiny human there, you got to care for, it disrupts things. So I'm selfish and a bad father. I guess that's maybe the thorn, because I should totally be like, it's so much fun spending time with my kids. And it is. But I have a feeling I'm going to get a little bit of time with the sick one over the next couple of days. So there you go.
Yeah, I have 100% experienced that same exact scenario for the last few weeks here at our house. I'm just not an idiot, and I let them play on the screens the whole time. And I can pretend they're not here. It's great.
Good.
They play on the Switch till they fall asleep in their bed, and it happens naturally. I get the best of both worlds. Also a Seal song.
Or the battery runs out on the Switch and you're like, it was fully charged when I handed it to you. Oh, that was yesterday. You haven't set it down since. Yeah. But the Rose, we traveled up to Colorado for Thanksgiving. And my brother and sister-in-law, they've got 2 kids, and one's about to graduate, the other one's in college. And they're like, so what do we do? And they decided that they're going to start working at the zoo to be able to get some extra income, to take trips or to go do this and go do that. And they're just like, we should do something. And they're both people, extroverts and things like that. So interacting and
so
they're
they decided
fabulous.
to work with not people.
Well, but they're working at the front gate, and my brother's running the carousel and all these different like people-y things. And so They said, we're taking you guys to the zoo. Well, we get up there on a Monday, exhausted from the drive. Tuesday, it's my daughter's 17th birthday. So we go and do some things.
Oh my gosh, that's terrifying.
Isn't that terrifying? Yeah. And then Tuesday night, it snowed. And I mean like 1.5 inches and 2 inches up at the zoo area.
A Texas blizzard.
Yeah, that has shut down the state of Texas. So Wednesday morning, they're like, well, it snowed. And we're like, okay, I guess everything's canceled. They're like, no, we're going to the zoo. And so it's like, 14 degrees. We're wearing all the clothes that we brought and we're out at the zoo and the wind is just cutting right through us. But it was amazing. The zoo was unbelievable. There weren't a ton of people there. Most of the animals were inside, and that's okay because they had things to do inside. We've got like a backstage pass because my brother and sister-in-law, they both work at the zoo, and they only do like a shift a month or something like that. But it means, when you go and you can buy a handful of lettuce to feed the giraffe, they're like, yeah, you don't have to pay for that. Just take as much lettuce as you want. And so I'm literally like holding up a thing of lettuce between two giraffes, and we're betting on which one's going to go and get it first. Like, I'm just like playing with the giraffes. I'm like 9 years old, My daughter, Stella, almost gets picked up by the long tongue of a giraffe as it's reaching her arm up. And anyways, and then my son, Benedict, didn't care a thing about the zoo. He went from place to place, and everywhere he would go, off the top of the trash cans or along the railings or over by some of the bushes, he would grab some snow and grab some more snow and grab some more snow. So he was, as the day continued, it was like, a cantaloupe size and then a watermelon size or a bowling ball size. And he just kept adding to his snowball and carrying it everywhere. And he wasn't able to take it inside. So it'd be 30 seconds of him looking around on where to hide it. But just the genius of boyhood and the innocence of boyhood came out so profoundly. And it was just a delight. It was just so much fun to delight in my kids, run around in the zoo and have almost every door kicked open for us like we were royalty. It was maybe the greatest day of 2024 that I've had. Certainly the best family day of 2024, hands down.
I'm starting to see a correlation between that trip and your kids being sick. There's a lot of licking by giraffes and carrying around ice blocks for hours. I'm starting to see correlation and causation here.
So much saliva on those giraffe tongues too, and they're really rough. The giraffe tongue is very rough, and I know that far too intimately because I touched a lot of giraffe tongue that day. Yeah, there's definitely
not
a
a
correlation.
sentence I ever thought would be stated on the show. Good job, Chris.
You're welcome. I bring a different angle.
Okay, speaking of different angles. The lightheartedness of this show is over.
It's about to get heavy in here.
It's getting heavy in here. So buy some larger clothes. That's how I feel when I get heavy. Okay. So my list of enemies is growing rapidly. And I am 35. How old are you? You're in your 40s?
I am. I'm 44.
44. So you're almost a decade older than me. And so I want to get your genuine insight into this issue that I'm having, because there's a couple of things happening where I've like tried to step out of myself and look at the situation and wonder how much of this is just normal part of becoming an older adult and how much of it is me being a bad person. Because I, dealt with anger for a long time when I was younger. And for the most part, like having kids and working with a bunch of lovely women, those two things really opened my heart, and I started to have feelings other than anger and desire. Like it was just very, very nice, and it was kind of one of those problems that was mostly gone. Like it wasn't on the high list. It used to be one of the sins that when I did go to confession, it would be very high on the list, and now I haven't confessed a sin of anger here and there, get onto somebody or, snap back at somebody. Sure. But it's not like as big as the other sins that I'm constantly, it's not like one of the big three. So
sure.
It's strange to me that it's kind of like rearing its ugly head again. But at the same time, like I look at like my dad and his whole generation, and like, as he got older, like, he had less friends than he did whenever he was younger. And that seems to be a theme with men as they get older, that they have less friends, and it is a lot more about family. And there seems to be just a couple of close friends and not as much a wider net. So there are two scenarios in this. One scenario is I am constantly angry at people I don't know now. Like because I work at home, I very rarely would drive around all the time. Like, I essentially during COVID for a couple of years, I was very much a homebody. So I got used to, like, I live here. I'm kind of in control here. All is good. And now every single day that I drive, because since I've been going to my recovery cryo place, I'm driving every day to at least go there and come back. And there is one primary place where this happens. And because you lived in College Station, you'll know this issue pretty well. There's a thing in College Station where we have these turn lanes where you're merging. There's, like a big 4-way stop, and then there's a turn lane going to the right. And in a lot of places in the world, you're supposed to stop there and yield until it's free. But in most places in Bryan College Station, there is a turn lane, meaning there is a huge blockade from the other traffic, like a big concrete slab or at least some kind of large curb, or at the very least, large, solidly painted lines. And this goes on for like 500 feet, and it's only for the turning lane. And there is one right out of my recovery cryo place. So I leave recovery cryo. It's kind of by Target. There's this one of those little loop-de-loop circle-y round things that we stole from Europe that everyone hates. But that's not even the biggest problem here. Constantly, every single freaking day, there's a turn lane, and I'm behind a line of cars with 8 people. And they are constantly waiting for cars to stop coming by. It is the feeder road for a major highway, the only highway in town. The cars are always going to be coming.
And they have their own acceleration lane.
If only there was a turn lane built for you. Go! And I promise you, I am yelling the word go and other words that I will not yell here on this show.
Like, please. Yeah, please go.
Yes,
yeah.
Please. Por favor. I'm thinking of all these words, right? It drives me insane. And it makes me angry for a solid 30 to 45 minutes. Some days I'm like, because here's what always happens. There is a light right to the right of that turn lane. And you know what happens every freaking day? By the time I get out of that turn lane, right when I get to the light, it starts turning yellow and then red. If only someone had gone 12 seconds earlier in the lane built for them to go, I would be home 4 minutes faster every day. So it's snowballing and snowballing and snowballing. And now I'm angry all the time. And it's not just, that's the biggest example, but it's just like, I don't know if people are just so bad at driving now, but the amount of 18-wheelers that pull in front of me in the fast lane, like the speed limit's 70. If you're going under 80, you're slow in Texas. And then they get into the fast lane because the other 18-wheeler's going 66 and they swear they have to go 67 to pass them. It's like the entire highway is built to piss me off, and it's working, and it's been 2 months of this where I'm angry. I get home angry. I get to where I'm going angry. I'm literally going to a place to get some relaxation and some health and some rejuvenation, and it's just every single nerve in my body is fried.
I want to acknowledge on behalf of all other listeners that know how to drive that there are a fair amount of idiots out there. And they're nice people. But when they get behind the wheel, for some reason, I'm like, I don't want you around my children. You know what I mean? And it's not even that they're reckless drivers. Those ones bother me as well. But those are morons, not idiots. Idiots are ones that are driving in the left-hand lane and they're not passing. That's an idiot. A moron is the one that's swerving in and out of the lanes without signaling. And I'm like, that's a moron. And so you got to beware of both. But my daughter who's driving now, and we're driving up to Colorado and I see a guy do this or that. And I'm like, hey, Philomena, be careful of that person. He's driving like an idiot. I don't walk around when someone else, oh, did you see that person? They just dropped something. They're probably an idiot. I'm like, I don't judge people like that, except when I'm in the car. Right. There's something about the road that turns you into they're an idiot. That as a human person, I love them. They're a child of God, whatever. But whatever just happened, there's a drone inside you that's driving you like an idiot, And so that's maybe the bad news or the good news, because now my daughter is aware, oh, I got to be careful of that person. And she is a saint. She doesn't say idiot, but she'll say something like driving's a growth area for them or something like that. But you're not wrong. But this anger that you have can be generational anger. If that excites you at all, this is yet another thing your kids can inherit because they get to hear you. I'm sure you tame it down a little bit, but it bubbles over when I'm a driver for sure.
Oh, yeah. Most of the time I'm alone, but there was one time that I was driving my son home and I started yelling at some guy, the reckless kind of stuff of just like, he almost slammed into my son on the side of the car. So like that's absolutely righteous anger. I'm never gonna.
Yep.
I have some questions about these other ones, but like if you're endangering my family, I have an absolute right to be angry, right? And I started yelling about it, and my son got home and said, "Dad was yelling in the car," and it's like I wasn't yelling. You should see you when you're not around, So that's kind of like level one. I have two other levels. I kind of have these three groups. People I don't know at all, and a lot of times that's when I'm driving, right? There's the second one, people I don't know at all that I actually have to interact with a lot. That's the second one. And then the third one is people that I interact with a lot. So the second one is really just one scenario. And it kind of bleeds into the third one where I actually kind of do think I need to get your perspective and your advice on it, because I don't like when people are inconsiderate or selfish. And I understand that that's a trigger point because I can often be inconsiderate and selfish. So a lot of times it is the like plank in the eye versus speck in the other, right?
Yeah.
But I have a situation currently with my neighbors. Not the I have talked positively about my next door neighbors before. It is not them. It is the other side. And they, for a very long time, it was one person that lives there. And now all of a sudden there's like 8 people that live there. And I don't know the story. I don't know them. We speak a different language. Like we say hello and we've been friendly for years, but we've never spoken because I don't speak their language and they don't speak mine. So
sure.
Here's the issue though. When they have all these people move in, that means more cars. So they park 2 cars in their driveway, a driveway that can fit 4. Now, I'm not an idiot. I can understand that sometimes other people leave at different times and it would be annoying to have other people leave or whatever. But there is one car that constantly stays in the driveway. You can park behind that one because it literally never moves. So just logically, I'm looking at the situation because what is happening is over the past few months, they have constantly started drifting a little closer to my house, a little closer to my house. It is not illegal for them to park in front of my house, but it is hella disrespectful. I think just as a neighbor and as a person, I think it's incredibly disrespectful, and I am taking it personally. So like, it's one of those things where the first few times it's like, look, it happened. But Chris, like, it's not just like they have a lot of people there and it's out of necessity. Like the first car that parks 10 feet from their driveway, like a car length from their driveway. And then the next person parks in front of them about 5 feet from that other car. So they're smack dab in front of my house, like dang near where my driveway is. They could park 4 cars in their driveway. They could park 1 car on the other side of their house without being in front of the other person's yard. Essentially, one in front of their fence line, one in front of the fence line on my side, one in front of the fence line on their side.
They'd have to get to 7 before they had to use the space in front of your house, and they do it at 4 or 5.
They're constantly doing it, and it's just been a slow creep. Like for a long time, they were being respectful and all this kind of stuff, and finally, I got fed up, and I'm at the point where like I'm about to go over there because I left a sign. It probably looked more scary than I intended it to because I was so mad that I just ran inside and I couldn't find a pen. And the closest writing utensil I could find was my child's red marker. So I wrote it in red, and my handwriting's not very good. It probably looked like blood. It was probably terrifying. But I put a note on one of the cars saying, please stop parking in front of my house. Park in front of your own. And I put that on the little windshield thing, and that car has not done it. And they all live together. So for a few days, nobody parked in front of my house. They are parked in front of my house right now. Like, so I don't know what I know what I want to do. I don't know what I'm supposed to do as a good Christian man, because I feel like there's this quality that I have. And this is a good example of people that I don't really know, but I feel like this bleeds into my real relationships too. I think I've been so Christianity pilled where I'm like, I just need to be the bigger man and deal with it internally and not, make it a big deal. It's not a big deal. But then what happens is it snowballs. And now every time they park in front of my house, I'm taking it personally because I've let it snowball for 2 months internally. Yeah. And I asked them in person one time to move their car one time, hoping that would signal don't park in my house, but we had a showing of the house and I didn't want their ugly ass car sitting in front of my house during the showing. So I was like, hey, can you move the car? They're coming at 2. And they did. And then another month passed and they started parking in front of, and I left the note, and then they didn't for a couple of days. And now they're parking in front of my house again, where I'm just like, how? I've tried to do it correctly. I've tried to be subtle. I've tried to be kind. But like at this point, like, am I wrong if I go over there and say, please stop parking in front of my house? It's like not neighborly, or it's disrespectful or whatever.
This is a great scenario. So love your neighbor, right? But also do unto others as you'd like to have done to you. If you and your behavior, without you knowing, was bothering someone, I get the sense that you would probably appreciate being told, hey, that kind of bothers me.
Yeah, I actually hate when people do what I'm currently doing and just hold it in for forever, and it bottles up, and then they just, like, I hate when people do what I'm doing is is for whatever in my brain I feel like is the holy thing to do. Hold it in. You be the bigger person. Let it go. But the problem is I can't let it go because it's in my face every day.
Yeah. Well, and you're also trying to sell the house, and so there is something about having your yard visible that creates literally curb appeal. That's where the phrase comes from, people. You know what I mean? So could you go ahead and eat up your curb appeal and allow my curb appeal to stay like a good view so that I can get this house sold? Like I don't think that's an unreasonable request. You can do things like set your trash can out, like when they move the car, set your trash can out right on the edge of your property line.
That is a good idea, because I've thought about bright orange cones, and I think that would be incredibly passive aggressive.
Yeah, and costly, but just you could leave your garbage out until you know that there's a showing or something like that, and then you could pull it in. But again, if they're like, could you move your garbage can? And you can be like, because things in front of my house look bad. That's why you want me to bring my garbage can in. Cars in front of my house look bad as well. Not to mention, and this is probably going to drive you a little nuts, but they probably have a garage too, Taylor.
They don't. Everybody in this neighborhood has converted garages.
Okay. I was going to be like, because that's another car right there, Yeah, so I don't think there's anything wrong with you. Your level of frustration is only wrong if you address it and it doesn't get resolved. So if after you've communicated it, and they still freely park in front of your house, then I think you can take it as an offense. Like, I think now they know.
It feels incredibly offensive after I wrote the note. And, to be fair, it was only on one car. But, like, right. I like, to me, I hadn't thought about the trash can thing. I had thought about the very passive-aggressive cones. But at the same time, it's just like, I'm angry enough that I either want to go talk to them, but that would be difficult because language barriers. But sure. Like, also leaving a note on somebody's door makes me feel like Martin Luther and posting a 95 theses or whatever it is.
Right.
So I don't even know which one's the better. Like, if I'm going to address it directly with them, putting it on their door, on their doorstep, or just trying to go over and talking to them. Because it's like, at this point, they might not. For a long time, they probably didn't know it bothered me. But like, I've communicated twice already. Like, and the annoying thing is like, I can't. It's not illegal. It's just so, I don't know. It's just disrespectful, I think.
Well, right. There does seem to be, it's against whatever, there's bro code or whatever there is neighbor code. You know right. what I mean? There's something there. And I think that when we get to the Christian piece of it, is like, isn't it just more Christian of me not to say anything? Actually, I didn't see Christ model passivity. Like, he actually confronted the Pharisees quite a bit. He confronted the Romans quite a bit. Like, he was not afraid to bring about conflict, to bring about good, and to call people up. He didn't necessarily call them out. He would say, go and sin no more. He wouldn't be like, oh, you dirty adulterer or something like that. But yeah, I would say that you as a Christian have in your toolbox the ability to go and have a direct, I want to say communication. I don't know if it's a direct conversation. It might have to be like Google Translate and you put it in English and then whatever the language is and then, whatever. But, and then to find whoever's the head of the household.
In uppercase letters so that they know I'm yelling.
Yeah. I mean, there is that element. And then if that fails, then buy a couple extra garbage cans. There you go.
Yeah. That leads in well, and your advice leads in well, I think, to that's just anger and frustration because of like, it's just rubbing up against things that irk me, like disrespect or like when it comes to the driving stuff, just stupidity. You're just dumb. You're just being dumb. Stop being dumb. But like,
well, and that stupidity is affecting the community.
yeah,
Right. Your neighborhood is a community. You're a neighbor. That means you're in community with your neighbor. The same with the traffic people. Like the person in front is actually delaying a sea of people. And it's infuriating to think
it really
your
is.
extra 60 seconds is actually costing 10 minutes when you add up everyone else's 60 seconds waiting behind you. That drives me nuts. So I'm samesies on that for sure.
So that one, it's anger and it like makes me mad, like, which sounds dumb, but it'll make more sense when I share the next one. My list of enemies of people that I used to be close with is also growing, and it makes me incredibly sad. So like that one doesn't make me angry. I guess I can be angry about it at times, but I have realized that a lot of people that I used to be close with are now either just not in my life at all anymore. And like, we've done the, like, you know, if it was a marriage, it would be a separation, right? Where it's just like, but there are people that like I'm enemies with now that I used to be friends with or coworkers with or friend or you know, did stuff with or whatever. But there are other people that I'm just like, we've just drifted apart. And I think a lot of it, this cycle that I put myself through is constantly doing what I've been doing with my neighbor and constantly thinking, I need to be the better person. I need to, you know, anytime you're in any relationships, there has to be some sacrifice on both ends. Right. But
Yeah.
I think so often people do stuff that upsets me or disappoints me or makes me angry. And I'm like, the Christian response is to just be like, understanding and be like, look, people are people have bad days. And I feel like I do that 15 times in a row. And then I have one mistake, one mess up, one where like I wasn't as loving as I could be, or I wasn't as Christian as I can be, or I got angry, or I said something that hurt your feelings. And then they blow up on me or ghost me or whatever. And I've had this realization over the last year or two that like for a very long time, I was in uneven relationships. And often the people in those relationships were telling me that they were in uneven relationships and they were thinking they were doing me a favor by being my friend. And I believed them for a very long time. And now with time and seeing this pattern of like both the flaws within myself of like, I think I do have a flaw of, I think my whole idea of trying to be the better person is actually ultimately a flaw because I don't air my grievances. I don't say when I'm hurt because I'm so worried that ultimately those relationships were never as deep as they probably should have been. So I felt like I was walking on ice the entire time where if I complained about something, all of a sudden I'm the asshole and I'm the bad person. And how dare you point out my flaws when you have flaws? I'm like, I know I do, but you do too. And there's just not this understanding that I thought, because like I have friends like you and I've had friends for years where like we've not been our best with each other. And look, here we are, right? Like, we can do that. But there's just other people where I have found myself in this cycle over and over and over again, where I ignore or try, or at least suppress 15 instances that really hurt me or were disadvantageous towards me. And then I do one because I'm a human being. And then I get made to feel like I'm the piece of shit. And it's incredibly sad because it makes me sad about my part in it of like, this is part of who I am. But at the same time, it's just like, it makes me sad that essentially I got tricked into thinking that I was these people's friends for a very long time. And it sucks. It sucks.
Yeah. So two things. First, sometimes it's just a season of life. Like it's okay if you're listening to Taylor and you're thinking, okay, I have friends that I'm not friends with anymore. Maybe I did something wrong, or maybe they did something wrong. Maybe there's something to be mad about. Maybe it was just a season. Your kids were on the same sports team, so you got to see each other twice a week at practice, and you chatted it up. And you spent some time with them, and a couple of hamburgers grilled out at each other's houses after the games. That's fine. And now you haven't seen them anymore because your son's not playing that sport anymore. Like that's fine. Seasonal friendships will come and go, and that's fine. But then there's, I think, what you're actually talking about a little more deeply, to where you have to eat garbage in order to be friends or feel less than. Like it's not honoring your dignity because it's an uneven friendship. I love the way that you put that. The banquet table that God calls us to doesn't serve garbage. It doesn't. So I don't think you need to eat garbage. And I don't think you need to feel bad for having flaws. Because I don't know if you know this, but there's only one person, two, in human history that could be considered fully human that had no flaws. Mary and Jesus. Everyone else, that's kind of the reason why we seek Jesus together. I would say something. Hey, it seems like we've kind of drifted, or it seems like we ended on a tense note, and I just want to set you free, or let you know that I'm open to talking or rekindling the friendship, or I just want to let you know that I'm kind of hurt by it, so I need some space. Whatever it is, you can share that and then kind of leave it be. Or does that stir the whole thing up again? I don't know, but you should not be eating garbage in a Christ-centered friendship. That is not at the banquet table. That's not on the menu.
Yeah. I think my fear is that if somebody does something that hurts me or irks me or just, doesn't sit right with me or whatever, and I bring it up, there have been so many times in my life where I get blamed. And like a lot of times it is people who are yelling at me that I'm gaslighting them, when ultimately when I finally learned what that word was, they've been gaslighting me the whole time. Like every time I bring up an issue, it gets thrown back on me and it's my problem. And so like, that's been my experience of the times when I bring it up and I do the opposite of what's coming naturally to me. And when I do bring it up, like what you're suggesting, I think it's right. But the reason that I'm picking up against it is that I do that. And then I get made to feel worse. And I'm just like, so at some point I'm trying to figure out how to navigate this as me. But at the same time, the big realization I had on my own was like, it was a sad realization, was just like, they were not as good friends to me as I was to them, no matter what they say. They would probably say the same thing, that they were a better friend to me than I was to them. Yeah. And it's taken me time away and time in the sadness to realize, look, I could have done things better. I could have communicated better, but ultimately, because of how things ended with a lot of these people, I don't think it would have gone well if I would have shared these issues. And that would have showed me earlier that they weren't actually my friend.
It is not unchristian to walk away from a toxic relationship. It is not unchristian to walk away from an unhealthy relationship or an uneven relationship. And in that case, as well as in the case where the season just changed and you're not friends anymore, both should lean into the beatitude as blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. It's sad when things shift or when things come to light and it causes a shift. Like, so mourn, bring it to Jesus and grieve a little bit and be like, this sucks. This sucks. This hurts. Blessed are those who mourn, bring it to Christ and they shall be comforted. And I don't know what that comfort looks like, but I do know that sometimes it looks like that friendship is forever gone. And that's the best form of comfort. And that's okay.
Yeah. Something that popped up back into my head that I saw it maybe a few months ago. I think I probably even reshared it or whatever, but like a few months ago, maybe a year ago, I saw this post that was meant to be a joke, but it actually struck a chord. And this is one of those things that I've been thinking about and constantly on my mind for months now. And I just didn't talk about it publicly because I didn't really have any kind of resolution. And I think I'm getting there, and I needed, to talk it out with somebody to get even more resolution and move forward. But like, it was said as a joke, but it absolutely resonated with me. It was like, Jesus didn't say, don't have enemies. He said, love your enemies. Right. And it's like,
yeah.
Like, and I think I have been feeling bad about the fact that I do have a growing number of enemies. Like, that makes me feel like I'm a bad person. But Jesus had enemies. They literally killed him, and it's like, he didn't reach out, every time the Pharisees pissed him off and they pissed him off and vice versa. It's like, he didn't go to them and be like, oh, I'm so sorry. It's not what I meant. He just let them be pissed off. He just let him run away and go, plot his death. Like, he just let him go. He didn't go back and, have a crucial conversation. He's like, bye, like, you see y'all later.
He didn't apologize for the truth. He said, I am the truth. Right. And I mean, that was scandalous and shocking, but he doubled down on the fact that, no, I am who am, and I'm going to stand by that, and it was shocking.
Yeah. So I think there's the challenge there of like, I'm probably also not that very good at loving my enemies. And I think that's kind of the things that you were saying is like separation, pray for them, pray for yourself in that situation. Like that is loving my enemies, but that doesn't mean that they have to go to being my friends again. They can stay my enemies and that's fine.
And some people you can only love at a distance, because if they get too close,
that's why we're
your
doing
own
this
insecurities.
Through Zoom.
Yeah, exactly. Come on, put them up. But if they get too close to your own insecurities, your own brokenness, or their insecurities or brokenness are going to put them in a place where that other emotions are going to be driving and they're not going to be able to love you. So some people you can only love from a distance, and that's okay. And God is still glorified. So I just don't want to be on that list of enemies, Taylor.
You're not. You've tried. You're not.
I have tried. Thank you for acknowledging it. I feel seen. Yes, thank you.
We played video games every week for many years. We're good. We've been through the trenches, literally, literally, figuratively, very
digitally.
Very good. Yeah. All right. Well, Christopher, that's our show. We did it.
That's it.
We had a very lighthearted 40 minutes, and then we had the next 20 minutes.
We dropped the hammer. So God is good. Thank you, Taylor.
I did not cry, although it almost happened a couple times. Very sad. I've just been very sad.
Sorry, brother.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go buy some cones. You know what? I have some for the track season, and track season doesn't start for 2 months, so they might come home with me for a couple months to teach somebody a lesson.
Just train them.
I like the passive aggressive approach, Chris. Thanks for that. All right.
Start burying an upside down St. Joseph statue in their yard so they move. That's the trick. That's what you got to do. Is you can just start doing it wherever you want. Yep.
I'm gonna bury them everywhere. Okay. This is coming out. I don't know what this is coming out. This is coming out the other. Okay, we'll be back. Another rose. Not by the time you hear this, very soon this week, as you're listening to this, I'm going on my first ever cruise. So there may or may not be an episode the next week because I'll be in Mexico on a boat with no internet. So I don't know. I'll be back next week or on Christmas. Chris will be back in a month. See ya
next year. Bye.
Thank you for watching and listening to today's episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you hit subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. Share this with somebody. We hope that you have a great final week of your Advent, and we will see you again on Christmas Day. I'm sure you'll watch it later, but enjoy it on your drive or flight home back from wherever you're traveling this Christmas, or pop in some headphones while your in-laws are in town and drown them out for about an hour. So enjoy the rest of your Advent, and if I don't talk to you before the 25th, have a very Merry Christmas from me and all of us here at Forte Catholic. Bye!